The Tigers are getting ready for Louisville, making real progress or just more distractions? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. Big salute out there to the everydayers. Monday through Friday, you know how we do it here. Exclusive Clemson content right here for you. And if you're new to the show, what are you waiting for? Hit that follow, hit that like, and that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. We've got a ton of stuff to get ready for this Friday night game against Louisville, one that a lot of people are very anxious about because Clemson needs this win as they continue to try to get towards being bowl eligible. Yeah, that's right. They are not yet bowl eligible so far, and they've got to win 2 out of the last 3 to be able to get there. Can they do it? And one thing that I wanted to start about with this episode is really talking about the defense. You know, Clemson's defense looked better against Florida State. Not as many big, giant, blown coverages. You know, they had Deuce Robinson. He made a couple of plays here or there, but he didn't kill you. And they came with a lot of energy, too. And I think a lot of that was kind of feeding off of the fan base energy because, as we know, the fan base brought it. You know, a lot of people were praising the fan base. And to me, I didn't give them a ton of praise just because I expect that from the Clemson fan base. I expect you, even when you're having a bad season, to show up and show out because it's not an accident that there's an 81,000 seat stadium in the middle of Pickens County. You know, it's not an accident, and it's all because of the fan base and the loyalty and the fanaticism and the diehardness of the Clemson fan base, and just the continued motivation and effort to keep going to these games, keep supporting their team. So I knew Clemson fans would show up. You know, will they boo if they need to? Yeah, they definitely will too, but they're going to show up and cheer on their team because there's always that glimmer of hope. There's always that hope for a better tomorrow, hope for a better week, hope for a win. It's never just complete doom and gloom in the upstate of South Carolina because we know Clemson has been there. We're not a team that has never been there. We're not a team that hasn't won national championships, hasn't won big games, hasn't beaten the best of the best of the best at their best. So Clemson knows that, and Clemson fans know that is there. And I think that helped feed into the Clemson defense, and help them look cleaner, have fewer blown coverages, have better energy overall. Dabo's explanation also from this week talked about eye discipline. And I would agree that the secondary has been struggling a lot with just getting caught looking in the backfield, whether it be Ashton Hampton or Khalil Barnes or Ricardo Jones or Ronan Hannafin or even Avion Terrell at times, getting caught just being a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too trying to make something out of nothing. There is a point where you want to make a big play. Elite players or talented players or guys who just really want to help their team. There is that struggle, that internal battle of it needs to be me. I trust myself more than anyone, so I want to be that guy that makes that play. Now, there's some selfishness involved in there, and pride, because you want to be the guy that shows up on the television or the highlight or ESPN Sports Center, whatever it may be. But I think when you're getting to the sense of with this team and having games that they've lost, a lot of ways the team's just trying to play too much outside of themselves. And so looking in the backfield, not being disciplined with their eyes, struggles with that man-to-man coverage because they're not actually paying attention to the guy they're supposed to be covering. Struggles with zone coverage because they're not actually paying attention to who is coming into their area. And we've seen that with Khalil Barnes. We've seen that multiple years with him. We've seen a few times in man-to coverage with Ashton Hampton. for this season. So that eye discipline is very, very key for the secondary to settle in, settle down, because if you're not disciplined with your eyes, then that really allows the offense to feast, especially when you're going against quarterbacks, which Clemson has gone against quarterbacks that have more confidence. And so, and have some playmakers. So, the fact that they were able to do so against Florida State was a little shocking to me. I mean, there's not a ton to trust with Clemson's offense or defense right now. I think we all can agree on that. There's a lot of doubt that goes into this from a fan base to their team. But it seems as if Dabo and the things they did, in between games helped settle in some of the secondary in their eye discipline. And he also mentioned about communication as well. And I think that's going to play key for the next couple of games. The big unfortunate thing for this whole season in 2025 is that it took them till November to get here. Nobody was ever expecting this team to take this long to kind of settle in certain things. And also there is the opponent too that I talked about yesterday. They're not really playing the best caliber opponent anymore. And these teams that they're beating are also struggling in the ACC. So the question then is posed, what is sustainable? Is this improvement that is sustainable? Is this something that is real, this discipline, this improved communication? Or is it just a good week against a bad team? And I've already kind of told you my initial thought was it is kind of a good week against a bad team. It's not a surprise by any means. Now, Dabo credited a change in the meeting structure for tightening up the communication. He said he finally felt as if all 11 guys that were going to be starting were starting to get more on the same page and kind of fight through some of their differences, some of their confusions and frustrations, and just having that relentless spirit to just say, hey, we know it's not been working. We know what we've been thinking or what we've been wanting to have happen hasn't been working. So let's sit down and work together and fight through it. Now, the good thing is that if this is real, then this should carry over to 2026. If it's not real, or if the players that were involved in this move on, then you're really starting from scratch again. It's going to be a big offseason for Clemson. Can Dabo keep this team together? Does he even want to keep this team together? And what progress they've made this season is only so good if those players are carried over. And so all the learning moments are only so good if they're still on the team in 2026, because they're just going to move on and go to other teams. Well, then the trials and the relentless pursuit of excellence is going to be shared, or maybe even the bear of fruit in a completely different team. So Dabo admitted that he saw breakdowns and 4th and 2 and overplaying routes and having some double moves, linebackers, reacting to the movement instead of following the process that they were lining out. And we've seen that, it's not just the secondary. And that's really where the start of the problem is it's not just the secondary, it's the linebackers being too aggressive or getting caught looking in the backfield, as well as the secondary. So it's really all, 7 or 6 guys that are 7 guys that are causing some coverage busts for this Clemson defense. This is the story of the 2025 season for the defense, is just not being very disciplined, over pursuing, not communicating very well. It's not just simply that this team is not talented. It's not just simply that they're not fast enough or long enough, even though some people say all these players are no good and they'd never play on any other team. I think some of that is true for some of the players, but for the most part, these players, I believe, would be starting on other teams in the ACC, but they haven't been playing very well together. And at times, I blame Tom Allen for that. I know a lot can be said for the players, but a lot can be said for the fact that Tom Allen came in and brought in this defense, and it just hasn't worked. But we saw a little bit of glimpse of some improvement against Florida State. Discipline isn't something that can just be a quote of the week or coach speak. They need to make it a habit. The defense has to prove Friday night that it will travel. And Louisville's style of play is going to expose them if they're not careful. And we'll continue to discuss Clemson going forward and the changes that they've made. Specifically, they made a big change at the strength and conditioning coach just this week as well. We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics also can save you hours on jobs where the details matter. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. There's a shift with Clemson's strength and conditioning program, and that shift is now going to Dennis Love. Can he toughen the Clemson defense and offense back up to the standard that we have been used to as Clemson fans? When Dabo announced that Dennis Love will be taking over for the strength program in January, he framed it, in his words, as a huge win. And he even mentioned that Love turned down the Minnesota Vikings in the NFL and instead wanted to wait in line to be the next man up at Clemson, because we know that Coach Batson was leaving and retiring. So fans would ask now, what does this really mean for Clemson in the future? What does it mean for their identity? What does it mean for their physicality? And to me, to be honest with you, I've always felt that losers and losing teams blame the strength and conditioning coach, because strength and conditioning coach Joey Batson was still there during the good years, and he's been there during the bad years. So was it his fault that they were good, or was it his fault they're bad? A lot of times when I've seen Clemson play bad, when I was a kid, I remember fans yelling because the strength and conditioning coach was the problem, when really at the end of the day, they just weren't getting the best talent in the country to play. Nobody complained when Dabo finally brought in the best talent. Nobody said anything about the strength and conditioning program. And then all of a sudden, now that the team is struggling again, it's the strength and conditioning coach was the problem. So for me, I don't fully attribute it to the strength and conditioning coach, or that the fact that he is retiring or anything like that. But I can understand how a specific coach in this world, can help improve the team going forward. Because to my understanding, there are limitations on how much a position coach or coordinator or even the head coach can work one-on-one with the players. But when it comes to the strength and conditioning coach, there's really not a limit on how often that coach can work with the players throughout the offseason. And so because that coach is going to be, your right-hand man as far as continuing this development of players off the field, specifically with their physicality, with their durability, and with their explosiveness. And when I say those three words, you're probably saying, well, Morgan, those are the three things that we need more of, more better. And Love, as Dabo described him, is a data-driven guy. He's a very good communicator. He seems to be a very good leader. He's exactly the kind of guy they want to kind of take over for Joey Batson. A little bit different of a style than Joey Batson, but he's one of those guys that Dabo believes will resonate with the next generation of Clemson football players. And I can understand that you need to continue to develop or continue to adapt to the style of players that you're bringing in, or the style of the generation of people in general. And some people have questioned Dabo in that area of, is he too old school? Is he too Nick Saban style? Is he too stuck in his ways to resonate with newer players? You could possibly say the same thing for Joey Batson. And maybe Dennis Love can come in and be a fresh voice of reason, a fresh communicator, a fresh leader for these players in the offseason. The fact that he nearly left for an NFL job should tell you enough that he is definitely respected nationally, and that other high-performing programs would have wanted him on their staff. So that at least kind of gives you a little bit of assurance that this guy is just not another no-name guy or not another Nepo hire. The big key issue, though, is will something like this translate to a more dominant Clemson team in the future? Can it help them play tougher up front or really across the board? Can it help Clemson play tougher, and be more durable throughout the season? We've seen times where we've questioned that from Clemson. Over the past 2 years, Clemson's biggest problem has been what? Well, it really hasn't been the fact that they're lacking talent. Everybody believes that they have the talent to compete with just about anybody. But the problem is something else. And you could say that the problem is a little bit of durability. The problem is a little bit of being able to finish games. The problem is a little bit of injuries and explosiveness. And a strength and conditioning coach can help improve those areas. If you look at the offensive line, they've been struggling with injuries here and there. If you look at the defensive line, they've also been kind of in and out, struggling with injuries. You've seen Colin Sadler injured. You've seen Walker Parks injured. You've seen Tristan Lee injured. You've seen Elijah Thurman-ish injured. A bunch of guys that Clemson should be relying on missing time. And so it's been more difficult. About the only one on the offensive line that hasn't been dealing with some injury or missing time would be Blake Miller. And as much as I pick on him for certain things, one thing you can't knock him for is the fact that he's available. So that could help improve the team and keep those better players out there, because now we're seeing, you need Walker Parks out there. You need Tristan Lee out there. You need Braden Jacobs and those guys to be out there consistently at a high level. I would say even for 2025, that explosiveness problem has been the biggest concern for me, that I do believe that a strength and conditioning coach can help with. The team's ability to not only be explosive from the defensive line, but also from the offensive standpoint, explosive off the snap for the wide receivers, explosive off the snap for the running back. I think that's going to, if they can find ways to improve that, new or different ways to improve that, it will help the team overall. They need to be more explosive off the snap. And that goes for the defense as well. The defensive ends haven't been that explosive off the snap this year. The defensive tackles haven't been that explosive. They haven't been able to shed the blocks like you've been wanting or been expecting this season. And so that ability to do that twitchiness, that explosiveness, a lot of it is talent. And I will admit that. But Clemson, everybody thought had the talent. So that's where the biggest concern has been. Why is there that gap? Maybe, just maybe, some of those things can be improved from the strength and conditioning coach. You can't really scheme as Tom Allen physicality. All that durability, physicality, explosiveness really does start in the weight room. The 2025 Tigers have lost that identity, and they're not hitting harder than everyone else. They're not scaring everybody else. They're not really, as durable as other teams. They're not finishing these games strong. And that's what hopefully Dennis Love can help with this hire, help bring back to Clemson. And yes, I will agree that, maybe just is all just window dressing, and the toughness problems aren't conditioning based. They're just talent based, and you just got to get better players. And I would agree with that. You definitely, have to get better players. But you're not going to, as Clemson, always get the best recruiting class. So you've got to be able to mold some of these guys that are, high performers in high school, but with a little bit of help could be high performers in college as well. This could be a big changing point for Clemson because everything starts in the offseason. When you look back at 2025 and your biggest frustrations, they probably could be linked back to something last year or last offseason or this offseason or 2 off seasons ago. And that is the truth. All right, hang with me for segment 3, the final segment of this show. We're going to talk about Dabo Swinney's baby boy and Clay Swinney in that 2-point conversion right here on Locked On Clemson. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Go over to FanDuel.com today and also go over to FanDuel.com/research and you can dig into what the experts are saying and giving you a little bit of an extra hand, an upper hand on what some plays out there may be the right ones for this week. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, thank you so much again for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the country. It's really awesome to be a part of this team. I've enjoyed it ever since I started in February, and I've enjoyed sharing the Clemson football season with you. And I look forward to sharing the Clemson basketball season, softball and baseball, and all the other things as well as we continue going through the rest of this year and into next year. I'm really excited about it. And thank you so much for the everydayers for hanging with me Monday through Friday. You know how we do it here. Exclusive Clemson content right here for you. And if you're not yet signed up as an everydayer, make sure all you got to do is hit the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. We all saw it. There was a 2-point conversion with Clay Swinney. It worked, but let me tell you, I don't know if it really did work. Okay. I'm still extremely skeptical on whether or not that actually was a converted 2-point conversion because it seemed as if he got stopped right on the line. It could be a gnat's hair between that football and that line, or that goal line there. But all in all, it was counted. So it is what it is. But it triggered a debate. Everybody kind of picks on Dabo for using his sons or using family and all those things. To me, when it blurs decision making, that's when it's a problem. When you have better options than what you are using because you're staying loyal or you're sticking to your family, then that's where I get a little bit of a concern for Clemson. Look, the play was installed on Tuesday, and they decided to run after the first touchdown, and that meant that they were going to send a message to the other team. And to be honest with you, I'm all for Clemson sending a message to their opponent. I felt like for far too long, especially during the past couple of seasons, that Clemson is just playing not to lose or just taking what the other team allows them instead of going out and being extremely aggressive like we've seen in the past with teams where Clemson and Dabo has really believed in what the product that they have on the field. I have felt like Clemson hasn't really had faith in the product that's on the field like they have in the past. But I did like what Clemson did with Clay Swinney. It was a little bit shocking. At first I didn't know how to take it, but if it was meant to send a message and show, hey, this is what we're going to come at you with, I like it. It wasn't perfect. Clay Swinney, again, I'm not sure if he actually got it, in my opinion, but the fact that he did get counted for the 2-point conversion, we'll take it and we'll move on. And it did send a message because it fired up the sideline when you saw them. It fired up the staff. It fired up the team. It gave them a little bit of juice. And hey, when you're a team that's struggling to get wins, struggling to stack wins, struggling also to win at home, you'll take anything you can get to get that confidence back that had been, lacking for some time. And even Dabo mentioned, it wasn't perfect, but they executed it enough to get the score. And also when they asked, did Kathleen Swinney know about it? He said she did not know about it. He joked that she is on a need to know basis. And I'm assuming, if she's on a need to know basis, well, she in that case did not need to know. As long as it fits what Clemson is trying to do and gain that momentum, show a display of dominance, of confidence, getting that early juice, that early momentum. That's what I like, and plus it blends what Dabo's values are about, which is having fun, bringing the energy, being family focused, living for the joys or the excitement of the moment. And those things to me are the pro do it again angle, right? But there's also a skeptic side of it as well. It is another cute play, right? Gone are the days, especially since they did the flea flicker play as well in this game. Gone are kind of the days of that dominant offense and dominant point scoring for Clemson. So, Clemson is kind of a little cutesy right now on offense and in special teams. And if you see that kind of stuff being the only way that they can gain momentum, being the only way that they can get points on board, then that does lend itself for me, being the skeptical fan that I am, to say, is this what we're about? We have to do these cutesy plays. We have to do these gimmicky plays or these trick plays to just dominate a bad Florida State team, to be able to hang with a Duke team that's not a very good Duke team either. That's not what we've seen from Clemson in the past, from a Dabo Swinney Clemson team. This team is struggling to stick up to hang with the expectations. And so I don't want too much of it, because what Dabo has proven to us is that he's been able to build dominating teams on offense and defense. And this team is not that. So while they need to do what they need to do to stack those wins in 2025, I don't want it to be the story of Clemson for 2026 and beyond. They shouldn't be relying on cutesy plays to get leads and to try to maintain a gap between average teams. To me, though, it's a good symbol of family, of fun, of energy, of execution, togetherness, and a little bit of that aggressiveness to go ahead and say, hey, we're going to send a message. So overall, I don't think it was that bad, but those are moments where it can kind of divide the fan base. It's like, well, you're willing to go out on a limb and use your son, but you're not willing to go out on a limb and play Gideon Davidson earlier, or you're not willing to go out on a limb and play Tristan Smith earlier, but you're going to let Clay Swinney get his moment, but these other guys, you're not. And I can agree with that. I do believe that is a little bit of a flaw there. But he doesn't do it significant enough or consistently enough to make me believe that it's malicious or going to do anything that harms the team in any way. I don't think Dabo would be, doing himself any favors by hurting the team overall by making bad decisions in that case. Even the decisions of being limited in the use of the transfer portal goes back to him staying true to his values and what he thinks the right way to build a team is, and not so much to try to just do things just for the sake of doing so. So I do believe that overall it wasn't bad. It is what Dabo Swinney Clemson is all about. And if it sent the message, which it did, then I'm okay with it. I just don't want the team to get too gimmicky with all these trick plays just to beat bad teams. But hey, this is where we are at with 2025. And we kind of have to accept that in a lot of ways as well. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono break down the most interesting college conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships to every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you at the top of the hill.